You know, when the government says, have we tried destroying British farming? Have we tried killing all of the poor? James O'Brien is the man who comes out and defends all of that. And he tells you how to do that in this book. And this is an interesting one because I thought How to Be Right. He's not actually going to try and sell it to you as a guidebook on how to be right. But he does. He does. It's an actual book that he thinks tells you how to be right. But translating to normal person, what this means is this is a guidebook on how to convince your friends and your acquaintances and your family to be woke libtard NPCs using a mixture of bullying, shaming and berating them to make sure that they stay in line. Because one thing that you'll notice straight away from this book is how lazy it is.
Oh, yeah.
It is the laziest book I've ever read. Now, I did the calculations, and this is being charitable because overall the book says that it's 232 pages. Of the main text itself, actually, there's about 219 pages, but I used the whole book. Of those pages, around about 32% of the entire book are reproductions of his calls on LBC. Transcripts. But if I were to reduce the page count down to the 219, that would be an even greater proportion of the overall page count on this. And then even when you factor that in, just take a look at the actual pages themselves, right? What do you notice?
Well, I noticed that there's basically double spacing between each line, actually, which you can probably see. There's a lot of space between each line, and there seems to be voluminous spaces in the margins where you can make your notes.
Yes, where I can write little miniature essays insulting James O'Brien. Let's pass it over to Josh as well so he can just get a feel for it, okay?
Ugh. No,
it won't infect you. I've disinfected it.
I actually had a look at this before we started recording. What I did like was you wrote a little note right at the very start after the first line saying, "You're so special, James." And he says, "I am a very rare beast. I am a liberal talk show host."
Well, I think...
Oh, yeah, where were you going to find those?
Yeah, exactly, right? So I think part of the other point of this is just for James to have a big ego-boosting exercise where he aggrandizes himself all the time, the whole way through this book. He's constantly talking, not about the arguments that he's making, because what you'll quickly notice is there aren't any arguments being made against his opponents in this. It's him asserting that he is correct, and then again, using a mixture of mockery, bullying, berating, and
I like
shaming.
the tactics. The tactics are good. It's just the message that's bad.
Exactly. And what you'll also notice is this starts not from the very first page, but from the first flap of the book. Would you mind reading this?
Every day, James O'Brien listens to people blaming benefit scroungers, the EU, Muslims, feminists, and immigrants. But what makes James's daily LBC such essential listening, and has made James a standout social media star, is the careful way he punctures their assumptions and dismantles their arguments live on air every single morning. In How to Be Right, James provides a hilarious and invigorating guide to talking to people with faulty opinions. With chapters on every lightning rod issue, James shows how people have been fooled into thinking the way they do, and in each case outlines the key questions to ask to reveal fallacies, inconsistencies, and double standards. If you ever get cornered by ardent Brexiteers, Daily Mail disciples, or Little England patriots, this book is your conversation survival guide.
And the interesting thing about that is the people who've read this clearly do take it as a conversation survival guide, because all of the talking points, all of the packaged responses come straight from this book. But again, what you'll notice there is, even in the flap, it's a bit of a foreshadowing. They're not going to actually give you the the argumentative tools to reasonably and logically deconstruct your opponent's arguments on first principles. Instead, it immediately just assumes wrong opinions, faulty opinions.
What's a faulty opinion?
Something that middle-class Lib Dem voters feel a bit icky if it's mentioned at the dinner table.
James O'Brien has privileged access to the objective truth on every subject.
Well,
Correct
I think
opinion.
what it is meant to be a placeholder for is just opinions that are unsavoury by the people that I want to ingratiate myself with.
Non-libtard opinions.
Yeah.
Yes, and you can tell that immediately by the fact that on the front page, you've got glowing praise from Robert Webb, Emily Maitlis. You turn to the back, it's got a glowing review from The Guardian, Caitlin Moran, Krishnan Gurumurthy, Gary Lineker, everybody's favourite black
It's
man.
like a laundry list of everyone that's annoying in British politics.
Well, and then you get another one on the inside, right after the first flap. You get Jamie Oliver, Susanna Reid, Danny
Oliver.
Wallace. Yep, the secret barrister, who you might remember from his other book, How They Broke Britain. Elizabeth Day, Ian Dunt, author of How to Be a Good Liberal. Stuart Lee, and etc., etc. So all of you who like making lists, thankfully, you get a pre-packaged one at the beginning of this book. But what I'm getting at here...
Just as a quick thing. If I was endorsed by any of those people, I would reevaluate my entire worldview.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, God, I'm doing something really wrong if that person agrees with me.
You're doing something wrong here, definitely. But I think one of the reasons that it's so lazy in providing the transcripts is that the original text in here, as mentioned, is simply reaffirming that if you already agree with all of the centre-left opinions on the subjects that it covers, and like Islam, Brexit, LGBT, these are the chapter headings, political correctness, feminism.
I love it. Yeah, if you already with these are the chapter headings. Just, oh my God.
Nanny states and classical liberals, or as I call it, the anti-Carl chapter, written in 2018, you know that he's making veiled references to Carl. Then the age gap Trump, and then you get the epilogue. So again, very, very short book. The point is that the text is not really the main feature here. It's the transcripts, because in those transcripts you get the reproductions of James talking to people who disagree with him, where again he engages in very, very bad faith debate tactics, and we'll go through a few of these as we go through the chapters.
Having it as a transcript lends itself better to his arguments because it makes him less insufferable. You don't actually get to hear his voice.
That's a fair point, but actually,
I would think so, but
what it actually reveals is the pure vacuity of his speech. The opponents that he has in these transcripts often are making nuanced and reasonable arguments, and he responds to them like a child.
Amazing.
And it becomes clearer when you have it in text. But of course, if you're Robert Webb or Jamie Oliver or Gary Lineker, you do not have the mental prowess to recognize this. And if you're an NPC being taught to be an NPC by this book, what you're getting is the immediate programming, your new programming. Oh, this is how I respond to these people. And that's what the transcripts are there for. And it's amazing how candid he is with some of these things. So I've put the bookmark on this page because this is the most important one. And the bookmark, of course, is a leaflet that Carl got from the farmers' protest, appropriately, if you know anything about James's views on the farmers and why they're protesting. I would like you to just notice what he admits to here on this page when he discusses a conversation he had with somebody. I think it was about prayer rooms in a school.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I asked him the name of the school and he told me. I had a quick scoot online and I couldn't find any reference to a prayer room or a particular predominance of Muslim students. And I've done something I've never done on air before or since. I lied. Andy, we've got the headmistress on the other line and she doesn't know what you're talking about. Andy hung up. I don't know why he wanted, perhaps even needed, the narrative of being overwhelmed and under threat to be so true. So much so that he made stuff up to prove it. Sorry.
So he made stuff up to prove it.
Andy he is accusing of making stuff up to prove it. But James literally is making stuff up.
And admits it here. But he has the nice caveat, I've never done it before or since, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Never once before or after this have I been a liar. All I am in this book is an admitted liar.
That's remarkable.
It's interesting that he's just okay with saying, well, it just randomly came over me to lie for no reason. Because
he needed to win against Andy, you see.
It's not exactly one of the topics that was, front and centre of British politics where the stakes are very high. It was like it's a very strange thing for him to admit, and I'm very surprised he did it.
Well, in the sequel book to this, How Not to Be Wrong, again, hold your laughter, we'll get to that when we get to it. Yeah, basically. That's presented more as a personal memoir, right? And it's very clear through the text of this book, but it's even clearer in that book because he outright admits to it, that his whole purpose of being in engaging in these discussions has never been truth or honesty. He outright says that, before I went to therapy, whenever that was, he doesn't tell you exactly when he went to therapy. Before I went to therapy, all I ever cared about was winning in these discussions. Right. So what if you're a viewer of James O'Brien, if you're a normie NPC who's a regular viewer of his show and you watch him frequently, why do you trust him after reading this book? He's admitted that he's lying, and he makes clear over and over and over again his whole point is winning, which suggests that the NPC perspective is just, I am a death bot programmed to win at all cost for my side.
And that's literally what he's saying there, because, I mean, Andy says, look, I'm feeling overwhelmed by the number of Muslim students at this school. They're in prayer rooms. This is a big thing. James O'Brien can't find anything online, so he just starts making up things to shut him down. It's like, okay, but doesn't this guy have a right to feel overwhelmed by the demographic change in this country? Like, is that not something legitimate? It's like, maybe, but that would threaten the libtard order that James O'Brien is currently trying to defend.
The funny thing is, he's not even being a good libtard, because he could be like, well, it's natural for you to feel overwhelmed, perhaps, but, you've got to get over it. He's not even being very good rhetorically, because he could potentially try and win this person around.
Maybe, but instead he's
offering them reassurance. Yeah.
Well, again, like Sam Hyde in the I'm Hitler's Top Guy sketch, he uses a mixture of bullying, shaming, berating, and other aggressive tactics.
My favourite tactics, yeah.
You are Hitler's top guy as well. He uses those tactics to berate the other person and shame them into agreeing with him, or at least shame them into being quiet about their actual feelings. Which, again, if this is the guide on how to berate other people, how not to be wrong is how to do that to yourself, how to gaslight yourself into being a libtard NPC.
Spoiler.
If you would like to see the full version of this premium video, please head over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe to gain full access to all of our premium content.